What's up, everybody? It is Building Beast here for the second episode of Beast Talk, which I'm very, very, very happy with the with how the first episode was received. So if you haven't seen it on my YouTube, Beast Talk episode 1 is up with Brittany as we spoke about chronic kidney disease. And pretty much for this series, I want to highlight a lot of the people that I know personally that have smaller businesses or have a lot of insight and good information, just regular everyday people that you guys can learn a lot from. So I'm inviting a lot of people from my circle that I love, that I respect, and I'm glad to present to you guys my man Shareef. I met Shareef at Apollon. He's wearing an Apollon Nutrition shirt right now. We very have a funny, interesting story how we got cool, but we'll leave that. We'll leave that for off the video.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is my man, and ever since we got close at Apollon, we speak on a weekly basis. We're always supportive of each other's businesses, ventures. We have a lot of life talks, a lot of deep talks. So I'm excited to present his story to you. He's probably one of the most unique young guys that I ever met. I almost forgot what year you were born until I saw your email address. I was like, God damn, dude! Forget Shareef is really that young. He's so wise for your
I
age.
appreciate that.
So I want to jump into it. So you battle with cerebral palsy and diabetes type 1.
Yep.
So that's a quite the combination to have. And you're very much into bodybuilding and fitness. You did wrestling when you were young, which we'll talk on. Is that the only sport you did or no?
Yeah. I was a wrestler all 4 years through high school.
So I wanted to speak about how does that, what are some of the challenges that you face, not only just in your fitness journey, but just in your every day-to-day that the normal person wouldn't, well, one that might even take it for granted or just wouldn't even experience.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I didn't become a type 1 diabetic until later on in life. I got it the week of my 16th birthday. So I was able to live a whole life without diabetes prior to this. So I know what it's like to be able to go out and eat that ice cream with your friends, or to be able to go out and have a dinner and not have to think about it in advance. And now it's like, well, if I'm going to go out with people, I have to plan ahead. I have to have an idea of what the foods I'm eating so that I can accommodate with my medication. I have to time things a certain way. And then it's just a matter of staying on top of everything. With diabetes, I'm constantly checking my blood sugar. If you see me at the gym, odds are you see me with a little blue pouch, and that's got all my stuff in it, my insulin, my glucometer. I carry that with me so that I'm constantly on top of it. But yeah, I do know what it's like to be on the other side of that, where I was just able to go out and eat whatever I wanted to, just live pretty freely in terms of my diet, in terms of when I was eating, how I was eating. And with diabetes, it very much is make or break. You either figure it out or you don't. Yeah, and I'll be the first to say, early on, I did not figure it out well. But now, fortunately, through fitness and through bodybuilding lifestyle, I've gotten a very good grasp on it, which I'm fortunate of. And now, you also hit on the cerebral palsy, so that's a whole nother beast in and of itself.
Get into it. You got time?
Yeah. So I was born with cerebral palsy. I didn't get that diagnosed until I was about 5. Basically, when I was initially born, my heel cords were short. So the heels of my foot didn't touch the ground. So when I stood or when I walked, it was always on the tip of my toes because they were underdeveloped. I had a surgery when I was 7, which was considered late in life for that. And then I spent a solid 4 years in physical therapy. just learning how to walk again up until
This is when
about
you were
the
young?
age. Yeah, this was up until about like the age of 11, 12.
Okay.
Just learning how to walk again. Forget running and all that other stuff. Um, and yeah, like I was basically chalked up to be like, okay, well, be grateful that he can walk, kind of thing. And that wasn't it for me. So as I got older, I was like, all right, I'm gonna try to do more. I'm gonna try to do more. I'm gonna try to do more. And I got into wrestling thanks to my family. Then I got into like fitness after all of that. And it's been great. Like the whole ride has been great. In terms of like what cerebral palsy does to me on a day-to-day basis. You know this pretty well just because we've talked about it. But like I suffer from like extremely stiff muscle. So much so to the point that like it can be debilitating to not just my mobility, but like just in my functionality. So like on a chest day, I'm stretching out my legs.
We laugh
Just
about
because,
that all the time.
yeah. Just because if I'm not doing it on a regular basis, come tomorrow, I'm going to be in trouble. You know, I'm going to be in serious pain. On top of that, like aside from the stiff muscles, I suffer from, the best way to describe it is like random muscle firing. So when I get too worked up or like stress levels too high or anything like that, it can trigger this. And it comes and goes in waves, but it can trigger this to the point where like, even though I'll say want to flare my bicep, you know, my shoulder will cramp up, or something that doesn't have to do with what I'm trying to do will engage as opposed to what I'm trying to accomplish. It's almost like muscle confusion. And these are like very painful flare-ups to the point where like I've walked into the gym and I've had them and I've had to walk out, you know, can't train. It's been so much to the point that like, I mean, not to get like too into it, but like it's been to the point where like I'll wake up some mornings and there's like a solid hour where I'm just in bed, not due to laziness or anything like that, but simply because I do not have the strength to move yet.
And that's still to this day.
That's still to this day. Yeah. And training has gotten a lot better, you know, made it a lot better. My flare-ups are like farther apart from each other, but it's not like it's something I can get rid of altogether. I can just prolong how long the next one is going to be for. You know, that makes sense. Yeah. So it's been tough, man. I mean, but we're doing good things, you know. I'm very fortunate to say I got a great circle of people that support me, and while they may not understand, you know, I've got good people in my life that are always there to help me. So
now, for you getting into wrestling, was that a way to just how do I want to word this? So I guess what I'm trying to say is, was like wrestling just something you wanted to do, or is like being that you battled cerebral palsy, like you wanted to challenge yourself to, you know, really push your fitness boundaries or your physical activities level because you didn't want to like kind of shelter yourself, if that makes sense?
So believe it or not, my freshman year of high school, when I first started wrestling, I didn't want to do it at all. It was my cousin, who also trains at Apollo. You might have met him, and my dad, who came to me one day, and my cousin made me a bet. He said if I could do one push-up with perfect form, I didn't have to wrestle. But if I couldn't, then I had to join the wrestling team and follow in their footsteps because my entire family had wrestled. And sure enough, I couldn't do one push-up. This was me going into my freshman year of high school. Couldn't do one push-up. Like not even with bad form. I just couldn't do it.
And they probably knew that ahead of time when they told you to do
it. Yeah. So then I joined the wrestling team and I fell in love. Like from like day one, week one, I fell in love. The brotherhood, you know, just the aspect of like the team individual sport, you know, because like my results were directly reflective of the work I put in. You know, they didn't rely on anybody else when it came time for my matches, but there were consequences to poor performance, not just for me, but for the rest of my team if I failed, you know? So I fell in love with that whole dynamic, and I kept going with it 4 years. And then it was my junior year that I became a diabetic going into my junior year.
Were you still wrestling at that time? Were you wrestling all through
Yeah.
high school?
Well, that was the tough decision that was a tough decision to make at the time, but I decided to continue wrestling, even as a diabetic. It was a challenge because I didn't know what I was doing, like in terms of managing my blood sugar just yet. Some would argue that I still don't know what I'm doing, but we're doing our best. But yeah, that was definitely a challenge, and I worked alongside with like my school athletic trainer as well as the nurse's office to just really try to stay on top of it. Didn't work out as well, you know, but I wasn't going to give up wrestling. It was at that time, like I decided, like, you know, forget all that. I'm not going to let something come up and completely pull me away from something I really enjoy doing. Plus, I just lost the season prior to that from breaking my arm.
Oh shit!
So,
I never knew you broke your arm. Damn.
Yeah. I broke my arm in a wrestling match.
Damn.
Yeah. Good times. I the guy's knee came down on my radius, and yeah, just clean break.
Wow.
Yeah, it's all good. So that's always a good time.
Does that still bother you today
Yeah.
with training, that break? But I never heard you speak about that.
No, not as much. I mean, like, there is, from a bodybuilding perspective, there is like a slight deformation in the symmetry of my forearms. That's like bodybuilding perspective. Like, it doesn't affect my grip strength very much. It doesn't like deter me at all. I'd argue that the side that I broke my arm on actually has my stronger the stronger two of my grip strengths.
That can happen sometimes, that you'll just put so much effort into it to like rehab it, and then like over time. That's what happened when I had broke my wrist. Like I started like putting so much work into my wrist and doing all this grip training and rehab stuff that like I actually ended up building a stronger wrist on the right side than the left.
Yeah. And like, unfortunately enough, like it hasn't thrown me off drastically. Like, I'm not like super unsymmetrical, because that was just when I was just getting into training too. Like, wrestling is really what started my training. Prior to that, like, I wasn't in the weight room. I didn't know like what a barbell or a dumbbell was. Wrestling started my weight training. Yeah.
That wrestling story is almost like a blessing in disguise.
Yeah.
Not saying you wouldn't have found a gym, but do you ever often wonder like how your relationship with training would have been if you never did wrestling? Like, was fitness ever like a thing that you were even interested in, or?
Honestly, if it wasn't for wrestling, I couldn't see myself having like found it on my own.
Get out of here.
Like, genuinely, just from like looking back at like the person I was, and like, you know, like everything I kind of had mapped out at the time, like fitness wasn't it. You know, fitness wasn't even something I thought about. And like, yeah, I probably would have been playing video games still, you know? Yeah, but like, I probably would not have found it without that push. And like, it really is one of those blessings, because like, this is the same cousin that then went on later on in my life to like introduce me to Paul and Jim. And like, you already know like how far that has come from me, you know, just being there. You know, I walked through those doors at like 158 pounds soaking wet. Within like a year or two, we were looking at a completely different person.
When the Lat Daddy came about.
Yeah, well, that's when I was like, what, 237?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I'm very grateful. Definitely a blessing. And I'm glad I was able to stick with it.
Yeah, I am too. So I do say that I think that everybody should experience a sport at least like once in their life at some level. Can you speak about some of the things that wrestling has taught you that you still like stick with and utilize to this day, whether it's mentally, physically, some of the emotional aspects that you go through? I know you spoke about the brotherhood earlier. Like, can you just touch on some of the things that wrestling has probably changed your life forever with?
Yeah. I mean, like the first thing comes to mind to me, and I might have shared the story with you, but like it's genuinely one of my favorite stories. So wrestling in of itself, for those that like don't really have a background on it, is a team sport. Like you compete as a team, but there's nobody next to you when you're it's time for you to go. You know,
Yeah.
it's one on one, you
And there's no
against your
tag
man.
team matches.
Exactly. So it's either I do my job or I don't. You know, I either win or I lose. The team might win, but I win or lose too. You know, so one of the first stories that comes to mind for me is we were wrestling a really tough opponent. I can't remember who offhand. It might have been like Bishop R High School or something like that.
Bishop Bar will be it for sure.
But we were wrestling a really tough team, and I was really hyped for my match. You know, I was expected to win. I go out there. I don't get pinned, but I lose by points, which basically means like to get pinned is one thing. He held your back. He held you to the mat. But to lose by points means you got outworked consistently, and he just earned more points than you. So I lose by points, and I'm upset, like very, very upset, because I just gone through like this major weight cut, right? Because like physically, like wrestling, you'll shift weights all the time. You know, I'd start the season at like, I would start the season at like 172. I'd end the season by like 130.
Yep.
And we're talking like a 2-month window, maybe.
Yep.
I just gone through like this drastic weight cut. I'd done all this cardio. I'd done all this work. I was upset. I was like, I should have won this match. I run into the locker room, and I'm in there alone. And like 5-10 minutes pass by. And my coach walks through the door. He doesn't say anything as he walks through the door. He sees me, doesn't say anything, walks right up to me. And the first things out of his mouth is, yeah, you should be upset. Yeah, it should hurt. I mean, think about it. A kid your age, at your weight, at you presumably your skill level, was able to either hold your back down on the mat or outwork you. That should bother you. And he walked out on that note. And like a harsh reality, right? Like that was real talk. And that messed me up for some time. I was like, forget this. I'm out. You know, I was ready to pack up and leave. Like, this guy doesn't care about me. But I didn't. And now, like, looking back on that, like, he really did teach me a valuable lesson, because then I went on for the rest of the season to, like, refuse to be outworked. And the lesson for me there, which, like I said, was truly valuable for me, was just to, like, stop making the excuses. Acknowledge that, like, everybody has their circumstances, you know, whether it be same age, same weight, whatever, you know, same financial demographic, same disabilities, whatever it is, everybody's got what they've got going on. It's a matter of me working harder than anybody else that comes along if I'm gonna win out, if I'm gonna beat them. and it's that mentality just translated in so many different aspects of my life, from like business to like training to even personal like relationships.
Yeah.
Like, so it's definitely one of those things I held on to.
Do you feel like before that you did make a lot of excuses for yourself?
100%,
Yeah.
100%. Like, you know, even before like wrestling altogether, like I would always say, oh, well, you know, I can't go running because of this, or, oh, well, I can't walk that fast because of this. So like it was just natural to like default on those excuses almost, because it gave me a reason to like not try harder.
Yeah.
And then like once those words clicked for me, I was just like, you know, I'm wasting time with all of this. Like, let's just get to work.
I like that energy.
Yeah. So that was the big takeaway for me, and you know, ultimately, like I carry that with me to this day. Yeah.
So with wrestling, did you just kind of like fall out of passion with it? You feel like it ran its course? Because I know you're in college now. You didn't decide to keep, pursuing wrestling at that point.
Yeah.
Where did that mindset switch come?
So for one thing, collegiate wrestling is super, super like tough. Like the gap in skill between high school wrestling and collegiate wrestling is insane. But on top of that, it kind of became like I didn't want to continue to put my body through how unhealthy like these weight cuts were. Like I loved wrestling as a sport. I love the idea of it, but like even from like early on, like I could tell how detrimental those drastic weight cuts were to my health and to like my overall development.
Yeah.
And like I just decided that like I'd give it my all for my team in high school, because they were with me through like good and bad times. They were with me from freshman year, and I finished off till senior year with them. But then when it came time to college, like I really wanted to focus on developing myself the right way.
So is that how your passion for bodybuilding pretty much grew?
Yeah, like bodybuilding training. Yeah, my first like memory of ever seeing a bodybuilding goes back to the same cousin. Like, yeah, I'm just now as I'm having this conversation with you, realizing how much goes back to this cousin, who's more like a brother to me. Like, genuinely grew up with me.
Yeah.
And, like, he put on Pumping Iron once. You know, the classic Arnold movie. He put on Pumping Iron watching. He was watching it, and I walked into the room. I saw these guys, and like right away, I was interested. I was like, okay, I see what these guys are doing. Like, why couldn't I do it? You know? And then like stop wrestling so I could put on some weight, and I just started training like that in a very bodybuilding style. You know, the classic like chest day, back day. You know.
Flat day.
Yeah, 8 to 12 sets. We laugh about it, but it's because you know that my first movement that I was consistently doing, instead of like a bench press or like bicep curls like everybody else, was lat pull down.
It's obvious too. If
Yeah. Like to this day, and I know some of your viewers might hate me for this, but like I think I've only flat bench pressed maybe 2 or 3 times, two of which were with you. So that just goes, and I'm talking my life, like my life.
He's not lying, by the way.
And
he can still bench press 225, which is the funny part.
It's, hey, I was a big guy, I guess. Yeah, so that's kind of what started out for me, like just wanting to develop myself the right way.
Yeah.
And Pumping Iron, man. Pumping Iron was great.
It's a very motivational movie for sure. I don't care if you're in a bodybuilding or not. Like that, when you see that, it does something for you.
100%.
You know, it does something for you. So in the sense of like what you're training, because I want to go back to the cerebral palsy a little bit and the diabetes. So I know you had which you still to this day have, like you're walking and your gait pattern is a little off. What are some of the movements that you find yourself struggling with when you are training, and how do you work around some of these, deficiencies that you find, with balance, and, sometimes you said with the muscle firing and like random muscle groups that you're trying not to activate. So like, how do you work around a lot of that?
Yeah. So, I mean, as you mentioned, like in terms of a lot of things I struggle with, a lot of it comes down to like balance too. For example, like though there has been progression for it, like I'll be the first to say, like barbell squatting as of right now, still like out of the picture for me. I just really don't have the balance for it just yet. And I say just yet because we are working on it, and it's not something I'm putting on the back burner. It's not something I'm like running away from.
Yeah.
It's just it really is one of those movements I struggle with. I don't have the balance. My like brain wants to default to like my toes shooting back up to like before I had the surgery. So that's a big one for me. Even things like lunges where like I would be thrown off my center of gravity can be a big one for me. And then like things you wouldn't think were hard for me, but like can be challenging. Even something as simple as like a leg raise, right?
Like
Beyond
for
a certain,
abs, right?
yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah. Like beyond a certain point, like my legs just don't want to cooperate. They don't want to go beyond a certain point, and that's usually due to like stiffness. But things along those lines. And then in terms of like the random muscle firings, it is either like I can get over it or I can't. There's no in between.
Has that happened mid-workout to you before?
Yeah. And
Not
usually
just walking into it.
Yeah, it has happened mid-workout. Usually what I'll end up having to do is first and foremost taking a breather from whatever it is I'm doing.
Yeah.
Just, quick lap, whatever it is, go to the bathroom, wash my face off. And then it's a matter of like really trying to refocus in, slowing down the movement, dropping the weight if I have to, and just really making sure that my mind is where it needs to be. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, I don't have it down to an exact science yet, unfortunately. And I don't think I ever will.
Yeah.
But in some cases, like just refocusing on slowing it down and like dropping the weight has been what I need to like kind of shift the muscle back to where it needs to be. It's just being conscious of all that, knowing what's happening, when it's happening, so that I can adjust, so that I can pivot, Same thing goes with my blood sugar too. Like knowing when I'm having a high blood sugar, knowing when I'm having a low blood sugar, just being very in tune with what my body is telling me has been crucial, like to training in general.
Do you experience a lot of blood sugar crashes when you train?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I was gonna say, is it better now, or is it like when you started training early on, you experienced it a lot more? Like you probably learned the process of it after a while.
Yeah, so pretty much exactly that. Like initially, it was bad. It was like I would go into training and like I'd crash within 20, 30 minutes of it. And then it got to the point where like, and this was like the young and dumb mentality where I was like, okay, so if I'm going to crash, then I should go into training with a high blood sugar. This way, when I dip down, I'll be normal.
Yeah, and then you dip
like,
down ridiculously low.
Yeah. And that was bad thought process altogether. Like you never want to be in either of those extremes ever. So, but like that was just how like I rationalized in my brain, and like we've come a long way since then. But yeah, now like I'm able to learn like not really how much I can push myself, but like what kind of a window I have based off the foods I eat and everything like that. Like, I know giving it like all out full intensity, I've got maybe a 45-minute to an hour and 15-minute window before I'm going to need my next meal, or my next like boost of sugar, whatever. I've also gotten to the point where like now, thanks to Apollo Nutrition and like a lot of their stuff has been helping me out a lot. Their carbs, you know, you see their products. So like I use a carb product during my workout, not so much to like gain size or anything, but to just keep my sugar at like a stagnant level.
Okay.
You know?
You talking about the cluster bomb?
Yeah. So yeah, and that just worked really well for me so far because
So
like,
that's something you do every workout?
yeah. I'll mix in my water, and like the water I'm sipping on during my workout has that just a little bit of carbs.
It's really smart.
Just to like keep me. It doesn't like help me stay like steady, but like it prevents that crash for that much longer. And it's a way for me to just push that little bit extra, you know. So I'm able to get in the training and then the cardio, you know. Yeah.
You have a certain pre-workout meal that just kind of been working for you, so you don't experience those crashes too much, or?
Yeah. So oatmeal has been really good on me. Like oatmeal for my body in particular, it takes a while for me to digest those carbs. So yeah, it's been ideal for me. So I'll go with oatmeal, some form of protein, whether it's just straight up protein powder or like chicken breast, some form of protein. And then I usually like a really complex carb, like peanut butter is a really complex carb. And all of those fats will give you low prolonged energy too. So that's just been where I live. Oatmeal takes me a while to process. Peanut butter is super complex and gives me a long lasting energy. And then that protein just for you know, everything wonderful about protein, whether it be the muscle recovery, whether it be the breakdown into amino acids or anything like that. So that's been kind of where I live, where I wouldn't want something like a Gatorade or an orange juice or something like that right before I work out. My body would burn through that, no problem.
That's probably something I'm assuming you did kind of early on when you said you would like load yourself up with sugar. Something that even the average person can get away with, but in your case, that's not going to be so great for you because you want to be more stable than experience these highs and lows so much.
Exactly.
That's smart.
You know, at one point I was like eating a cup of ice cream a day, like right before my workout. I was like, this can keep me going.
Because that's what we'll tell somebody. Like, if you want to get your most high sugary stuff, do it right before your workout or after your workout. But that's speaking to the general, normal, healthy population.
Exactly.
That's not speaking to someone who experiences these insulin, drops and things like that. So
and that's really where like a lot of my issues stemmed from initially, was listening to the general public on matters like this. And not a lot of material out there for diabetics. Like, hey, this is how you train. This is how you get there, you know? Because there's not a lot of diabetics that are very prevalent in fitness like that. To the point where like they're releasing content and it's well published and documented, and like, so a lot of it is to each their own. You know, you kind of figure it out as you go, or you have somebody that's been in a similar situation to kind of guide you. But
so I guess this segues perfect into the next topic of being, your wrestling background and dealing with diabetes type 1. Would you say that's what sparked your interest into learning more about nutrition?
100%. In particular, the diabetes. So I was always very interested in like what diabetes was, what it meant for me. Because in my beliefs, the more you understand something, the better you can handle it.
Better believe it.
Right? So the more I knew about diabetes and like what it meant for my body, what it meant for like what's going on the inside, the better I could address it. And since diabetes was so heavily like food related, it just was a natural segue. Once I learned what I had to learn about diabetes, I need to focus on the other end of things. Well, how can I manage it through food now? And that started that whole like, okay, well, let's get into food. And nutrition came first, and then like I have a bit of a culinary background too.
You do it all, dude.
Yeah.
We're gonna get there.
Yeah. So that stemmed that first, and it just kind of went full circle. And it got to the point where I was like, well, why not? Why not go down this path the long haul? And I started going to school for nutrition, dietetics in particular.
Yeah.
I'm still going to school, Middlesex County College. Hoping to finish up very, very soon. But, COVID allowing and all.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it just made sense to me, especially being somebody with diabetes. I figured it was the perfect opportunity for me to, I guess, help or guide other people struggling with the same things. Mostly because I didn't have a direct source of guidance that I knew I could depend on. So yeah, it just made sense to me, and that's kind of what started that bug of wanting to learn more. Yeah.
So you're saying like long term, your goal would be to give more education to people about diabetes, helping them with nutrition planning and nutritional guidance and things of that nature.
Yeah, and I wouldn't limit myself to just diabetes. Yeah. I mean, nutrition as a whole, like, because there's so many like chronic disease and illnesses and ailments that nutrition plays such a pivotal part in.
Yeah.
That I think like just shifting that importance back to, hey, what you're eating, where it's coming from, what it's doing. I think making that shift back to like that level of understanding, or that at least thinking about those things, is ultimately like what I would hope to accomplish with anybody I may work with in the future. Just to get them to like to really feel for like all of that stuff.
Yeah, we never want to think it's things that we put into our body whenever we're sick too, because it's not gonna happen. It's not always gonna happen right away. It's chronic.
100%. Like everything is a slow buildup. Like it's like with creatine, right? Like you can't just take creatine once and expect to get results. You've got to build it up slowly in your body, and then like maybe you get results, maybe you don't. I'm not going to start that whole debate on if creatine works or not, or if it's a steroid or not, whatever. But it's just like one of those things. Like everything is a gradual onset. So yeah.
So you're going for to be a dietitian long term?
Yep. Dietetics is my current major. I am most likely going to pursue the clinical route. So go into like clinical dietitian work. But
we'll see. Deep stuff.
Anything is subject to change. I'm always open to where I feel like I need to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I like about you, man. So you brought up earlier culinary. You were a chef for a couple years.
Yeah. So
keep going on with that.
Go for it.
So what I was gonna say, being a chef for a couple years over quarantine, probably around the time that I actually started the Coach's Vault, you got into a meal prep service.
Mm-hmm.
I remember we had conversations beforehand of like the interest of you to do it, so I guess what I want to ask is what made you finally push the button on it, and what would you say is different about how you want to offer your meal prep service from a lot of the other ones that's out here?
Yeah. So just a bit on the culinary background. I was very fortunate to have an opportunity to learn from a lot of arguably some of the best chefs in New Jersey, not just New Jersey, it extended on well beyond that too, but initially in New Jersey. And at first it really was just learning. I didn't know anything going into it. But I was there for like 3 years. I had the opportunity to learn. It was great. And then I shifted over to nutrition, and like I really focused in on like school and things like that. And I kind of dropped the culinary side. Not because I didn't love it or anything like that. It was just, it demanded too much of my time and focus for me to pursue nutrition.
Got it.
Now with quarantine and everything like that, well, one, we all have a lot more time on our hands right now. We are getting busier, so that's nice. But especially initially, it was one of those things that I had always thought about. I always knew I could do a good job with, because I had the knowledge. It was just a matter of getting all my things together and just executing. So quarantine really offered me the time to do that, and the freedom to do that. I wasn't tied down by having to go into work. I wasn't, tied down by having to go into school or anything like that. So yeah, it's this meal prep service is really just the merger, or like the baby of my two like sides of passion for food, the culinary aspect and the nutritional aspect, where like I like offering, quality tasting meals that aren't your typical cut and dry protein, carbs, veg,
chicken, rice, broccoli.
Yeah. I'm not about that. I like my food to have just a little bit more finesse.
Okay.
And while still offering healthy alternatives or healthier alternatives to what other people might be defaulting to, so still utilizing that nutritional like kind of lens when creating these meals. So I'll do things like, we were just talking about a little bit earlier, like the keto portobello mushroom, right? With poached egg. It's not your typical meal. It's not your typical meal prep, but like it stands out.
And it's macro friendly too.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's macro friendly. I really enjoy the flavors on it. I think the execution, the presentation is great, in my opinion. I'm biased, but yeah, it was just one of those really fun meals to do. Yeah.
Yeah, talk about some of the other meals you have on your menu, because this last week, man, you got a lot of good stuff on there.
I appreciate that. Yeah, so I rotate my menu out every single week. Some things I'll keep the same from week to week. Just really depends on how I'm feeling about it, or if I want to try it again.
Okay.
But
fan favorites and stuff like that too.
Yeah. Thus things will make a reappearance here and there. But rotating things out really just gave me an opportunity to keep things fresh for people that are supporting me, people that are buying, on top of like keeping things fresh for me. Because it gave me an opportunity to just not fall into rhythm, force myself to constantly think outside the box. So like we do all types of different flavor grades, from like Middle Eastern. We have the like chicken tikka wrap.
Incredible.
I appreciate
it's incredible.
I appreciate that. Or like one of my initial fan favorite meals, we did the chicken teriyaki with avocado, balsamic bell peppers, all wrapped up nice. And that was the meal that started it all for me. Yeah, and then we've got like more Hispanic inspired meals. I do a taco bowl with pollo a la brasa, and ají verde sauce. Then we do, the more Asian inspired, stir fries,
Yep.
and I make all my own pastas by hand. I hand make them, hand roll them, hand cut them. All my wraps are handmade. Even like half the vegetables, like I'm sitting right next to my garden right now. Half of the vegetables I'm using that like I can afford to grow on my own and use come straight from there.
That's crazy, man.
So like everything I'm doing right now is just really allowing me to reconnect with food and help other people along the way. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I'll
I'm
tell you
fortunate.
one thing. I think you're giving a lot of creativity to these meals that's letting people know, like, that's what I tell people. I'm like, you can eat healthy and, like, really enjoy meals. It's not as bland and boring as you think it is. Like, these plates can be colorful. You can play around with sauces and seasonings and stuff. Like, everything's not chicken, broccoli, and brown rice, dude. Like, far from that, play around with a lot of different veggies and a lot of different carb sources. Like, I like how you really use a lot of mushrooms. I love mushrooms. Utilizing bell peppers and things like that. And I think it's really unique what you're doing, and you're giving like health a little spin to it.
I appreciate that. Yeah, and like you brought up a great point in like terms of like just general meal prep. Like, I try to practice what I preach, but when it comes time to it, like there are so many things you can do, and I guarantee you could find a way to fit them into your plan. Like they make sugar-free barbecue sauces now. Like I didn't think the day would come where they make a tasty sugar-free barbecue sauce. They do now. It's delicious. The brand I'm thinking of is G. Hughes barbecue sauce. I don't know if you heard of them. Great stuff.
Maybe I don't know.
You should check them out. Delicious. But like on top of that, like you have so many different great veg options. Like I know we treat like vegetables like second-class citizens. We're like, we don't really need them. No, you need them, and you need a variety of them.
Yes.
We've talked about like G bombs, right? Garlic, berries, onions, mushrooms. Yeah. You just need that like variety in your life. So like one of my favorite vegetables to cook for meal prep is zucchini, right?
Yeah.
Like, when's the last time you yourself went out of your way to just have a nice piece of zucchini?
Very true.
Yeah.
Very true.
Zucchini. We talked about like mushrooms. Like, hell, even if you don't like mushrooms, I guarantee there's a mushroom out there for you.
Oh yeah, there's all different types of them, dude. I eat mushrooms these days now. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I love it, man.
You just got to find the one that works for you. And like, if you really don't like mushrooms, still so many great options out there for you.
Yeah. I think we just kind of get trapped into like spinach, broccoli, and like carrots and some shit like asparagus. Yeah. That one's got a little more popular, I think, over the years, Brussels sprouts or something. But there's so many different, greens that you could play around with, different colors that you could play around with.
Yeah. Like
even utilizing like sauteed onions or something like that. Like it's just
right. And like
so much.
All that translates to flavor too. So like for anybody out there saying your meal prep is bland, let me tell you something. If you put in the time, if you put in the effort, it won't be. So like I don't do the plain white rice either. I will if it's asked of me, but like my default standard rice now is a turmeric, ginger, black pepper infused rice. One, I think it tastes better. I think it's a better like quality. But two, it's got all of these great like anti-inflammatory elements going into what you're eating. So it's more like a holistic approach to healing through food than, hey, let me just supplement this, turmeric and bioperennin pill real quick.
Yeah. That's
so,
even awesome that you think that deep on a level when you're creating these meal plans.
Yeah, and a lot of
that shows that your nutrition background and knowledge is coming in when you're placing these meals all strategically together. Like this is gonna complement that. That's going to complement that. And then your culinary side comes in. It's like, all right, this flavor goes well with that flavor. Or what if I switch it out this week? Like with the taco bowl, the first week you went ground beef, right?
Mm-hmm.
Second week you went chicken. Now this week you're going shrimp. And, you're
Yep.
playing around with how those different protein sources, infused with some of the flavors. You
Yep.
got something
Yep.
going on, man. That's awesome.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. And you've been one of my most loyal supporters since week 1. So
Yeah. And
yeah.
I'll be there on week 31 too. So
It's funny how that all started. Like, it really did just start with, hey, do you think this is something I could do?
yeah. Sometimes you just need something as simple as that as a conversation.
Yeah. And then it was a quick yes, and then it just became a thing. Like next day, I was out there doing meals.
Yeah.
So yeah, it all works out. I get.
So where does magic come in all this, man? Like you do culinary, you got the nutrition background. Like when the hell did you pick up magic?
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, so I am a magician. That's more of like a for fun thing now. I picked it up basically when I was first diagnosed with diabetes. And reason being is just because I was in the hospital for like 2 weeks maybe. I was like admitted into the hospital so they could teach me how to be a diabetic and everything. And they gave me a deck of cards and like the little welcome kit. And I didn't have much of a view, and like I wasn't one to watch really TV back then. So I just started playing with the cards, seeing what I could do with them, starting from that. I remember seeing like magic videos online. They weren't nearly as popular now. Like magic has been popping off lately.
Yeah.
Thanks to like America's Got Talent, Britain's Got Talent,
Yep,
all
yep.
those. But like back then, we're talking like nobody was doing magic like that.
Yeah. That was looked at as like nerd shit.
Exactly. But like there I was, deck of cards and the YouTube. So we started searching things up, and I just fell in love, man. Like for those that like don't really know much about magic, well, I'm assuming that's most people. Most people don't know much about magic. I'll say that like magic is, very simply put, a bunch of small things done really, really well to create a big, like, to create a feeling, And so it was just that, like, that's what attracted me to magic so much. That, like, grind, of, well, this is such a small thing. Like, it should be so insignificant. Why do you practice it so much? Why do you polish it so much? So that's really what attracted me to magic so much. It was all of the small things that contributed to the ultimate like illusion. And like even that took off for some time. Like I've done a lot in like a professional career sense. I've done a lot of like jobs and like work here and there. At a time I was working with somebody who was the owner of the nonprofit organization, Teens Do Sales NY. And he had hired me to teach him magic professionally, one, as well as to teach courses on how kids could utilize magic in like a sales perspective. So like magic legitimately was a job for me at one point. Like,
oh wow.
I made money doing magic. I would get hired for like college events, like fraternity, sorority events at colleges I didn't even go to.
Damn, dude.
Yeah, so like magic legitimately was like a job for me at one point. It wasn't like my bread and butter. I wasn't gonna buy a house off magic.
Yeah. Definitely got a couple gigs over the time.
Yeah. Like I was getting paid to teach classes. I was getting paid to do gigs. And now, like, you see me, if you ever come up to me and ask me for magic trick, I guarantee you I probably have a deck of cards to me and I'm ready to do one. Like, yeah, so
So you can
it
be the
just,
caterer and the magic person at a kid's birthday party at the same time.
yeah. That's actually some of the things I'm getting into now.
That's amazing.
I'm doing some catering with the meal prep service, and like occasionally they'll ask me to do a couple magic tricks while I'm there, and it's just been fun. It's been a great time. Kids are tough to perform for. Kids are real tough to perform for.
Kids will let you know a lot about yourself too.
Yeah, well, kids will call you out on something, no problem. You know, like I could be performing for a kid right in front of me, and the kid across the room is gonna tell me, "Oh, he knows how I did it." You know, so
Love it, man.
kids are tough, but I love it. You know, and it really did start as my way of like talking to people. Like I was super introverted initially, which I know sounds super far-fetched now.
Yeah, I didn't meet you as an introvert.
Yeah.
You might
But
argue that, but I don't see you as so much of an introvert.
you know what? I'm arguing it less and less now because I realize that like that phase of my life is probably past.
Yeah.
But like after I got out of the hospital, I used to force myself. I'm pretty close to one of the malls here. So I used to force myself to walk to the mall every day. I'd go into the mall and I'd force myself to perform magic for at least 3 strangers before I was allowed to leave every day.
Wow.
Just for not even to practice the magic, but more so a way to like teach myself how to approach people and how to like talk to people. And like at first I was there for hours. And then I was there for an hour. And then I was there for 20 minutes before I was done, you know? And it just became easier and easier and easier. But like I had to hold myself accountable. Yeah. So
you got some interesting stories, man.
yeah, I've been told. I just
Yeah.
I'm very open for whatever it is to come. You know, I try to turn anything that comes my way into some sort of lesson or just be positive about anything.
That's how you should be in life. We can talk for hours. I don't want to hold you up too long, and I don't want to bore everybody watching it. But I remember I found out that you had cerebral palsy. I'm bringing it back a little bit when you were telling me about your squatting journey, and then I saw you under the barbell one day. I didn't think it was the safest. We spoke about that a little bit afterwards. But I remember looking at your form, and I was like, oh, you know, his heels are coming up. I knew nothing at the time about your surgery. I didn't know anything about you having cerebral palsy. And then you broke that down to me. You know, pretty much everything that you said earlier. So me and Shareef has been working on his balance very loosely. I haven't been like really working with him as a client like every week or something like that. But we've been working very loosely on restoring his balance, teaching him how to squat properly. And we made it a goal that by the end of 2020, he would be able to perform a full body weight squat, up and down, not falling off your toes, proper squat, you know. So I do want to say your progress has been amazing, you know, from when we started with we're still working on from the bottom up. I don't see you every week doing it, but every time I walk in and, well, before quarantine, every time I would see you before quarantine doing your squats and some of the routine stuff that I was giving you, because you're the first person I've ever helped in this regard when it comes to like cerebral palsy. I've never worked with anybody with, and I've worked with a lot of people in my training, but I've never worked with someone that had cerebral palsy. I've worked with other, you know, autoimmune diseases, but this was a new one for me. I knew about it, but I've never experienced it in person. So for you, it was very interesting to see some of the things that you were battling and seeing your progress over time. Because you did do a squat a few months back, it was a little wobbly on the way up, but you were able to go down into your squat and come up without your toes or your heels leaving the floor, which was a big step. So it'll be exciting to see by the end of the year if we can really get you under a bar, balanced, getting down and up comfortably the way you should have been instead of being loaded with 135 onto a box. That was just a complete shit show at the time. But yeah, I just want to commend you for that, for really sticking through with the programming that we've been doing and the consistency of it, and literally watching you progress on it. And a lot of the single leg work, I think, has been a big helper for you. So I just want to say keep on doing that, stay consistent, and I still have it that by the end of this year we're gonna get you to squat. Yeah. COVID or not, you're gonna be able to squat.
I appreciate that, and a lot of it's come down to just taking your advice, really.
I try to help.
Yeah, like you said, starting from the ground up as opposed to just jumping into it.
Literally starting from the ground up too, because that's how you should be teaching the squat, starting from the ground up. But I want to plug you a little bit, man, because you need to be plugged. I want you to give your Instagram, your email account. Shareef is doing meal prep services. Are you taking nutrition clients too?
I am. I have a handful of clients that I work with right now.
That's beautiful.
If you're interested, all of that information, you can reach out to me. Basically, I'll work with just about anybody that needs that little bit of extra, one-on-one guidance.
Yeah, you've been working with a few people that I work with too. We've been having a great relationship with that, so I appreciate you with your services, helping them in that area.
Yeah, I love it, man. I love it.
So give us your Instagram, give us your Gmail, and I'll let you go, man.
So the Instagram is _SX, like the letter X, Khan, Khan. The email is going to be my name, so Shareef, SHAREEF, Khan, KHAN, 00 @gmail.com. And yeah, you can follow me on Instagram, shoot me a DM, email me. I'm always open to talk.
Awesome,
consult,
man.
whatever.
I'll make sure I put that in the caption, description box, whatever that stuff is on YouTube.
Yeah. So looking forward to it. Yeah. But appreciate this talk, bro.
Absolutely, man. I hope to see you soon. Stay healthy, stay happy, stay productive. And I appreciate you taking your time out to speak with me, sir.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. It was a good time.
Yeah, man. I'll see you, Shareef.
All right. Have a good one, boss.